Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I interview inspiring, fascinating women who are navigating aging with class and sass. I'm your host, Nicole Christina. Hey everyone, I am so grateful for all of the downloads, and I'd love a rating on iTunes and a comment. And please subscribe. It helps the show's rating so other people can find it and learn how to age well. And if you are loving the podcast, why not check out the companion online course, Zestful Aging, Simple and Sustainable Habits for Health and Longevity. You can access it through my website, NicoleChristina.com/Zestful Aging. It's based on the Harvard study of adult development, and I'm really proud of how it's turned out. Well, I've got my coffee in my hand and my trusty dog Sparky beside me, so let's begin. Our next guest is Lisa Sutz, who is a social worker at DeRote, a nonprofit organization whose goal is to alleviate social isolation and provide concrete services to older adults. DeRote has been an innovative leader in the fields of aging and volunteerism. Lisa's going to talk with us today about the importance of having friends of different ages as we get older. And it's also called intergenerational friendships. And we've seen these initiatives in Europe as well, where college students are living with seniors, for example. So we're going to hear more. A warm welcome, Lisa.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to hear about this because I think for most of our listeners, this might be a bit of a new idea. Do you find that some people haven't quite heard of this initiative to get people of all ages together?
I think so. And I think it's really a symptom of the problem that for a lot of younger people, a lot of older people are really just kind of invisible. So it's not a thing that really occurs to a lot of people until they end up having a situation either with an older parent or a grandparent that really opens their eyes to the fact that older people and younger people spend less and less time together.
It's interesting that you said that because I watched some videos before our interview and they had kids coming in, or in your case I saw some of the high school interns,
Uh-huh.
and at first there is this sense like, oh, this is different,
hmm
but it really shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't be. And it wasn't really generations in the past. I think one of the casualties that's come with our sort of really super hyper mobile society is that even on a family level, older generations and younger generations don't spend as much time together. It's great that everybody can move to different parts of the country or different parts of the world. But one of the negative things that come from that is that younger people don't often grow up in close proximity to the older people, even in their families. So they don't have that sort of baseline foundation of affinity, of comfort. And so it doesn't always occur to the younger people that there are older people in their community that they might learn from, that they might enjoy being friends with. And so it's a less natural fit, I think, these days. People just aren't as aware.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you're talking, I'm thinking of sort of the typical sense of community.
hmm
Probably did include all kinds of ages.
Yeah. If not under the same roof, then certainly like on the same block or going to the same stores. And I think our communities are more and more segregated in many ways. And one of those ways tends to be generationally.
And I'm guessing that you're seeing a lot of loneliness in seniors. I know that's an epidemic problem. Is that one of the things that some of this programming addresses?
Absolutely. Social isolation is a huge problem. It's a problem for health reasons, even if someone isn't sort of minded to be concerned about it for humanitarian reasons, which I certainly hope they would, then even on purely economic terms, it should be a concern for all of us because of the devastating effects that it has on people's health and well-being and ability to be part of society. But yeah, that's absolutely, DeRote was started way back in 1976 by some recent Columbia grads who noticed that there were a lot of seniors in the area and they seemed to be alone a lot. And they just started to think, who do they turn to when they need help with something? Who do they turn to when they just want to talk? And why is it that we don't have natural ways for us as a younger generation to interact with an older generation? And so they decided to start an organization to help make those intergenerational connections more natural, and more present in their lives, and also to reduce the social isolation for the seniors.
It's really a big part of being human.
Oh, absolutely. When we do it
Yeah.
well, yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some examples? I think we can all understand this sort of conceptually, but can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about some of the successes that you've seen in your career as a
Yeah.
social worker. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's one senior that comes to mind who I've been working with for 3.5 years or so, and he had gotten connected with DeRote about a year and a half prior to me coming, and at the time that he was initially assessed by one of my colleagues, she described him as being extremely withdrawn, that he would barely speak, and that he was relentlessly negative. And she ended up finding over time three different young men that over time have become his regular weekly visitors. And by the time I met this man, he's gregarious. He never stops laughing. And what changed in his life was the influx of these three people. This man happens to be homebound. And so his world had grown so small, so narrow. He just didn't have any access to the people and things that mattered to him. And bringing in these three young men who could really share with him, who could also make him feel like a teacher, to actually enjoy what he had to bring to the table, just brought new life to him. It was so striking that when I read his file when I first started, I was like, this has to be just a different person with the same name. There's no way
Hmm.
this is the same person. He was
Wow.
virtually unrecognizable. And when I went to go meet him, it became clear this is a very social person who, unfortunate life circumstances had left him alone. And it was against everything in him to be that way. And so he had shut down. And having these people in his life has just made all the difference in the world.
As a clinical social worker, seeing people, I imagine that without a context to understand this, somebody might say, "Well, that's clearly just a depressed person, and
Mm.
he used to be different. Now he's depressed. Maybe he's lost some of his supports. Let's put him on medication."
Mm.
But what you're saying is this is just a natural part of being human,
Mm-hmm.
and it has to exist for people to make life worth living.
Absolutely. We all need to feel like we're valued, like we have something to contribute. And the people I meet, the seniors that I meet in the course of my work, time and time again, because they don't have anyone in their life on a regular basis that tells them that, start to believe that they have nothing worth sharing. And that's really incredibly demoralizing. And we all suffer from that because let me tell you, these people have so much to share. They have lived such interesting lives, and we're really, all of us are losing if we don't tap into that resource, if we don't value their humanity. It's a mistake for everybody.
You sound so passionate about your
Yeah,
work.
it's I see it every day. It's something I always intuitively knew, um, maybe because of my personal life experience, my prior work experience, but being here and meeting these seniors every day, it's unmistakable.
Well, I saw on your bio that you had originally studied political science. Is that
Yes,
correct? Yeah. You
yes.
want to talk a little bit about that transition for you? What made you decide, I don't know if I want to be a consultant anymore.
Mm.
I want to be more involved in helping the lives of elders.
Yeah. Well, I had always had a focus on working with seniors. From a very young age, I always felt a particular and special connection. So even when I was working in the worlds of politics and government, that was always sort of my niche. So I always focused on senior outreach, went to lots of senior centers. But over time, what I came to realize was that, being in politics, being in government, to me was about public service, although it ends up being about a lot of other things too. And so I just decided that I wanted to pivot and sort of eliminate the rest of that stuff and just focus my time, energy, and passion on the parts of it that were really about boots on the ground, direct practice, and being of
Mm-hmm.
service in a more one on one way.
It sounds like sort of stepping out of the ivory tower a little bit.
Yeah, there was that element too. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of detachment in some circles, and a lot of things that are about theory as opposed to actually getting to know people and listening to them and meeting them where they are. And I thought that, I didn't want to, that wasn't really where my skills were best utilized.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the challenges of your role now?
Well, you know, there are lots of complexities in terms of helping older and younger people bridge some generational gaps. There are certain linguistic things, ways that people referred to things years ago that are mean entirely different things or have different connotations to younger people. There's a sort of pace of life that's very different for our younger volunteers because we have teen interns and college interns who also visit seniors. What they're accustomed to is sort of a rapid fire everything, an immediate gratification,
That's right.
and really helping to coach them and support them to slow down a little and to really listen and to really hear what someone's saying. That takes a little time and coaching. But it's definitely something, a bridge we can overcome. That it's something that's a challenge for the senior and the younger person, but it's also one of the things that's great because for the older person in the partnership, a lot of times they say that it gives them a renewed sense of energy, a greater connection to contemporary technology, to contemporary pop culture, so they benefit in that way. And the younger person gets to see that like there's a benefit to not always being so hyper connected, and there's a benefit to the one-on-one versus everything being, up for public consumption. Maybe they can just sit in someone's kitchen with them and have a lengthy conversation about life. And they don't
Mm-hmm.
often have the opportunity to do that. No one's really trained them to do that. So here is a person who wants to learn about them and will sit and just talk to them. And what a blessing for a younger person to have that experience.
Mm-hmm. So take me through the process of do you recruit teens to come and volunteer for DeRote?
Yeah, well, for the teens specifically, we have partnerships with lots of schools, some synagogues, different organizations. So for the teens, they mostly come in through that way. But we also get lots of teens that reach out to us. They're on our website. They decide they want to do some what they usually refer to as community service, or they just want to do some volunteering. A lot of times, also now we have, Dorota has been around since 1976. So we have generations of families that have been involved. So maybe they know that their mother was a friendly visitor and visited a senior, for a week, once a week for years. And so they grew up with this just being something they saw. It was modeled behavior. And so now it's just part of their life. So maybe, as part of once they become bar mitzvahed and they want to have a special project they do, they decide that they
Mm-hmm.
want to visit someone. People come in through every avenue that you can possibly imagine.
And so you bring people in, and then how do you train them to do this volunteer work with
Mhm.
seniors? You said there's a little bit of tweaking that might need to happen.
Yeah, the programs are slightly different for the younger volunteers. So let's say for the teens and the families, because we have kids that visit with their parents that can be as young as 4 years old. Those aren't for ongoing weekly visits. Those are for sort of sporadic visits. Like 4 times a year, we do something we call package deliveries, where we go and we visit seniors in their homes and bring these packages full of gift items that are sort of seasonally or holiday themed. So
Mm-hmm.
very little kids can do that. But for the ongoing weekly or monthly, what we call friendly visiting, which is where you're going to visit for a minimum of a year to build an ongoing relationship, there's a very extensive screening process for that and an orienting process, because it's important to make sure that we make the matches very thoughtfully. So for each person that's going to become a regular visitor, a friendly visitor, they go to an orientation, then they meet with a social worker for an interview and an orientation, and then they're assigned a social worker who supports the match. So the social worker becomes the social worker to both the senior and the volunteer and supports them over time. So in the initial stages of the relationship, talks to them after each visit and helps them walk through any questions, any challenges, just talk about what's going well, what you guys enjoy doing together. And then over time, as the match sort of solidifies, the social worker remains a presence in that sort of like triangle of support, as we call it. And so it becomes just a really powerful ongoing relationship.
It sounds very time intensive and
Oh, it is
skill
very time
intensive.
intensive. That is true.
Uh-huh. I see. So, what comes to mind is, do you have a way to talk to your volunteers about the possibility of them losing their connection to death?
Yeah, obviously that's something unfortunately we deal with. Not infrequently. And it's something that we begin talking about when they come in for an interview to make sure that they understand that that's a possibility. And that's one of the reasons why they have an ongoing social worker, someone that they build a relationship of trust with. And sometimes, when a match starts, maybe the senior is in very good health. And maybe, a lot of matches go on for years and years and years. The longest match that I'm following right now, they've been together for 21 years.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
So the senior is now in her upper 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a long process of adjusting. And the possibility is, of course, that the senior may die, and we're there for support in all kinds of different ways. And also the preparation for that, because there are lots of losses that can happen along the way. Loss of mobility. There's some pairs that always like to go outside and do things together, and then maybe 2, 3 years into the match, things have changed for the senior and they're not really able to get out anymore. So if they used to love to go to baseball games, then we help them brainstorm like maybe they can't get out to the baseball game, but maybe they can watch it together on TV and have, a version of that experience. Maybe they listen to it on the radio if the senior's vision is no longer, good enough to watch it on TV. There's so many different ways, and so that's part of our role is to really help people think outside the box and really find what's at the root of the connection. The activities matter, but not as much as the relationship.
So they have to, I mean, both the senior and the volunteer have to make adjustments as the years go on or as
Yeah,
time goes on, which is exactly what has to happen, within ourselves as we age
yeah,
and within our families.
yeah. It's a great lesson in flexibility for everybody and about really accepting people for who and what they are and learning to grow together. The seniors and the volunteers grow and change over time. I mean, that pair that I mentioned, that have been together for 21 years, when the volunteer first started, she was a new young professional, new to New York. Here she is, more than 20 years later. Now she's a mother of three.
Oh
She
my
now lives in New Jersey. She commutes to come visit the senior. It's her entire, both of their lives are totally different, but they've built this solid base of support, and that's what keeps them together.
hmm Hello, Zestful Agers. A short intermission to thank you for the incredible amount of downloads. I love creating this podcast, and it's so satisfying to know that you are enjoying it too. Creating and hosting Zestful Aging has been a blast, but it does require a lot of time and resources to deliver a high quality interview to you every week. So I've signed up with Patreon, which is kind of like Kickstarter, but for ongoing artistic projects. Unlike Kickstarter, the donations are recurrent and the amount is usually smaller. When you become a patron of Zestful Aging, you will receive special benefits like behind the scenes info, a place to communicate with other listeners, as well as other patron only bonuses. These funds will be used to make equipment upgrades, particularly for mobile interviewing, and to travel to interview guests, like to New York City to interview participants in the Diversity Fashion Show. I also need to hire a professional editor. So please go to patreon.com/Zestful Aging and make a small but vital donation. Thank you for contributing to the ongoing success of Zestful Aging, and I can't wait to bring you more juicy, inspiring interviews. Now back to the show. And for you, what do you do to? It sounds like there's a lot of stuff that happens that fills your heart and makes you hopeful.
Yeah.
How do you navigate the parts that are difficult, knowing that there's so many lonely people and it's such a health risk and you can't get to everyone? How do you do that within your own life?
Yeah, that's a challenge. I definitely come back from visits sometimes, and it really requires a little bit of time and processing and honoring the fact that I can do what I can do, and it's not always going to feel sufficient. And
Mm-hmm.
really, the most effective thing is to talk about it for me with someone else, with a colleague or someone else that can understand, and to really just try to be creative and also just to be present in the moment. There are sometimes maybe I go and I meet someone and maybe they're too memory impaired to be in a friendly visiting match. And for whatever other set of circumstances, they're not going to participate in any of our other programs. That can be especially frustrating because I feel like what did I give to this person? You know? And then I remember, well, what I did was I sat with them for an hour and a half and I really listened. When I do my job
Mm-hmm.
well is when I know when someone says to me when I leave, like I felt like you really heard me, or thank you so much for listening to my story.
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Mm-hmm.
I often don't feel interesting. You made me feel interesting. To me, that's not nothing. It's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
It rarely feels like enough, but there is power in that
Mm-hmm.
to
How
remind someone that they matter, you
You
know.
know, I think about that sometimes now as a social worker, and it seems like it's more and more rare to sit with someone for
Yeah.
a good part of an hour and
Yeah.
nobody being on their phones, unless, of
Mhm.
course, you're working with teens and they're always checking their
Oh,
Instagram. But, to sit there and actually have a conversation where you're making eye contact, where you're not also prepping dinner or empty
mhm.
the dishwasher and you're just sitting there. It's so rare.
Yeah, it's a gift. It's so rare. We're not accustomed to doing that. A lot of us aren't necessarily intuitively comfortable with doing it because it's not something we do frequently. And people are so rarely, especially, asked anything about themselves. During interviews with volunteers, I ask them, a little bit about like if you could dream big, tell me the perfect person that you would want to spend, this time with each week. They have a hard time thinking about that. And then they have an even harder time when I ask them, if I were just to describe you to a senior that I might want to pair you with, how would you want me to describe you?
Oh, wow.
And people are often floored by that because we don't take the time to think on those terms. We rarely have the breathing space to do that. Too many things are about efficiency, and there are lots of, just pressures to get things done. We all want to get things done, but there's a beauty and a power in just being present with people.
So much of this is just basic what humans need. It's
Yeah.
really getting down to the basics of being mammals
Hmm.
and being in a tribe, you
Yeah.
know.
I think the other reason why sometimes people are a little bit nervous about having more lengthy or deeper conversations, specifically with older adults, is that there's a discomfort in hearing things like frustration about loss and about sadness. And I mean, there are seniors I meet who are the most optimistic and upbeat people, but there is a certain reality that part of getting older can often be dealing with losses in a resilient way, absolutely. But for a lot of people, they just don't have the language or the comfort to talk about those kinds of tough things, to sit with that.
Absolutely.
We try to make that go away. We try to explain it away instead of just saying, "Yeah, that sounds really tough. How is that for you?" Just staying there. And I think a lot of times people feel that, and so they sort of perform a little. And I think we need to really try to get away from that and let people feel what they're feeling and be a little bit more vulnerable with each other. I think we'd all really benefit from that.
Yeah, I just was became aware, and you may already know about this woman. She's a palliative care physician in Britain named her name's Catherine Mannix, and she talks about we don't use the D word anymore. We
Yeah,
don't use death, and we say, oh, they passed away, and let's not really say what it is because it's too anxiety
right.
provoking, and it, we miss such a chance
Absolutely.
to really address it in all of its complexities.
Yeah. And people deserve to have those thoughts and feelings honored. Otherwise, we're avoiding it for ourselves. If we
Mm-hmm.
dance around those subjects, who is that for? That's not really for the benefit of the older adult. That's really for our own comfort.
Mm-hmm. Mm. How has doing this work, the would you say the boots on the ground,
Hmm.
how has it changed your life?
Mm. I feel more optimistic. I really do. I see things that perhaps I think I've always been pretty attuned to the challenges that older adults face, but I see things through different eyes. Walking around just, in your average subway station, I see all the points of inaccessibility. I see I see all of the challenges. I see how tiny the font is on everything unnecessarily. How there are so many little ways that we could help connect people that instead, like, we just don't design our systems and our places to do that. And
Well,
I
we
think,
better start because,
yeah,
as I'm sure you're aware, the demographic is shifting
absolutely.
hugely.
Absolutely. It's going to need to happen, but it should be happening already. But that's one of the things that's beautiful, that I see so many young people come here that become passionate, dedicated spokespeople for this kind of intergenerational work. That once you see the isolation, you can't unsee it. I can't even
Mm-hmm.
begin to tell you how many seniors we serve who live in walk up apartments and are
Mm.
basically prisoners in their own homes. They
Mm.
would otherwise be able to get out, but they can't do the stairs. So they're literally stuck in their apartments because they can't get out. And there's
Mm-hmm.
nowhere, where are they going to move? So it's like there's so many different ways that we could address systems and structures. There's a macro piece and a micro piece. And I think we should and can be doing more.
Mm-hmm. Is Where are we as a culture in the US? I've seen a lot in terms of, some of the more Nordic countries like Sweden and Denmark and Norway starting to bring college kids. And I hope I'm not misquoting this or misconstruing this, but people coming in Europe, giving free housing, for example, if
Hmm.
the college students might live in the senior center or the senior living facility. Are we doing those kinds of things as well? Where are we as a nation in
Yeah.
terms of doing these innovative programs?
I'm not an expert on this, but it's certainly something that I read about and am very interested in. And I know the programs you're talking about. There's a large program like that in Denmark that's
Mm-hmm.
apparently extraordinarily successful. Um, to my knowledge, there isn't any sort of wide scale effort to do that here. There are sort of little smaller pockets of things. I mean, even here in New York City, there's an organization called the New York Foundation for Senior Citizens, and they have a home sharing program. And so it's an opportunity for seniors that have extra space in their apartment to rent it out to another person to come live with them. But it's done in a very carefully screened way. And
Mm-hmm.
my understanding is that originally it started out that it was mostly seniors moving in with other seniors, which has its benefits too. But
Sure.
over time it's evolved, and some apartments are now it's the senior has the apartment and a younger person is moving in with them. And that seems to be growing in popularity, that sort of arrangement. And the organization helps interview and screen and background check and helps facilitate and assist with the communication. So I think there are little pockets of projects, and
Mm-hmm.
there's some talk about developments. But I mean, we don't have a residential version of that here at DeRote, but that's kind of what we try to do here. Find ways to get people together to have meaningful conversations. Like we have an intergenerational theater program, for example, where the seniors and the teenagers work together to build scenes about their lives over, an extended period over the summer. We have an intergenerational chess program, so they connect over teaching each other chess. So just finding different ways to have people come together and share their space one on one and also in groups. I think it all makes a difference.
Does DeRote do any advocacy in terms of trying to get the powers that be a little bit more interested in helping seniors?
I think, again, it's a delicate issue, and I think exactly where one draws the line as a nonprofit, it can be a little bit complicated.
I
We
see.
certainly advocate, for funding for senior programs. We certainly have gotten involved. There's actually a rally tomorrow to fight age discrimination, and DeRote is a partner in that. So we do get involved in those things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What's your favorite part of the job?
Yeah. I think my favorite part of the job is the home visits. I never know who I'm going to meet, and I never know how I'm going to be able to be helpful. And it's just a powerful, intimate experience to go into someone's home, to spend that time with them, and to really listen to them. And when it goes really well, ideally, I'm able to find a niche for them that ends up really making a difference in their life. Like I'm thinking about this one senior who I met a few years ago, and she was actually she's a young senior. We serve people over 60, and she's on the young age of that spectrum. She's At the time I met her, she was in her early 60s, and she had a devastating health situation come up, and so she was basically homebound. And sitting with her and talking with her, she had developed a lot of anxiety about going out because of all of these health issues. And
Mm-hmm.
having someone talk to her, listen to her without judgment and without an agenda. I think that's the other important thing, that I don't have any horse in this game. The only thing I care about is really listening to them and helping to move things in the direction that they want.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't have any vested interest. My only vested interest is in helping. And I think people can feel that and are more open to participating in things as a result. Also, because we don't frame it and I don't see it as some form of charity. That's not at all what this is about. When they enter into these matches, these friendly visiting matches, this is a
Mm-hmm.
reciprocal situation. I don't see it as
Mm-hmm.
them benefiting from a service. This is them giving a service as much as it is them receiving a service. That's really
Mm-hmm.
how we see it. And I think people can feel that, and so they're more open to things. So the
Well,
senior
you're
I was thinking,
valuing them. Yeah.
right. Nobody wants, especially, we serve a lot of people who have spent their lives, dedicated to serving others. And then they find themselves in a situation where, it's hard for them to do that. And maybe they need to reach out. And it's really hard
Oh,
to
yeah.
accept help, where there's definitely a stigma for that. So, as much as possible, framing it differently is helpful for everyone. It's also true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. So, what would you like to see added to your programming? Is there anything that you're working on now that's new and that's exciting you?
Yeah. Well, we're doing a lot of really interesting things now with technology because, you can fight it, but that is the reality of where things are going. There are a lot of different ways in which technology we can actually use it to do our work in a better way and to help seniors more. So, one of the most popular things that seniors ask for is actually technology tutoring because they want to be able to stay on top of the news. They want to be able to access city services. And now you can't really do all of that stuff necessarily easily on the phone anymore. So a lot of seniors want to get involved for practical reasons and also for social reasons with computer stuff, with iPads, with iPhones. So we have a really robust computer and tech tutoring program. And we're building on that now so that we're also going to be, we have in office services sometimes, special events where seniors can bring their mobile devices if they're able to get out. And we're integrating that as well into our University Without Walls program, which we've had for decades, but until recently, it was exclusively a telephone conference call system. So we have
Mm-hmm.
classes that are held over the phone. And now we've actually started to add an iPad program so people can see each other, engage in the conversation, in a dialogue, in a discussion, stretch themselves intellectually, educationally, and also socialize at the same time. Because we all know a voice on the phone is great, but there's something special about seeing someone. So
Mm-hmm.
now we're incorporating the visual element. And so we're trying to use technology to enhance what we do, to connect people instead of disconnect people. Because it's not
Mm-hmm.
inherently bad. Nothing is inherently bad. So we're trying to use it as a tool to
Mm-hmm.
get better at what we do.
Do you find yourself walking through the city and thinking, what creative way can I think about connecting seniors and interns? Is that something that's constantly kind of percolating in your mind?
It is. It is. I've had the opportunity to supervise college interns for the past 3 summers. And I have a social work graduate student right now that I'm supervising. So I'm always thinking of, creative and different ways to help connect people, to help open each other's minds, to help share interests. It's, like I said, it's one of those things there. Once you start to see that way, you can't unsee it.
Mm-hmm. It sounds so hopeful. As you say, you're optimistic, and I can see why you would be. You're
Yeah.
making such a difference in not only the seniors' lives, but I imagine the interns' lives as well. It would be even hard to describe, I imagine, all the ways that this helps a teenager evolve and develop.
Absolutely. I mean, the feedback we get from, for example, from our college interns is that it's a really transformative experience. The interns in my department, the community services department, they see two different seniors every week during their internship, and then a number of other seniors that they just see 1 or 2 times. And they also participate in our door to door program. So they help seniors get to medical appointments. They go shopping for seniors. They go shopping with seniors. So they connect with people on so many different levels. They connect with people on the deeper social level for the people that they're spending more time with. But then they also see what it's like when, for example, it's the middle of summer, a senior has a medical appointment, and they need to hail a cab. They see the realities of what it's like when the cab just drives by, when they can't raise their arm high enough comfortably to catch the attention, when every sidewalk is chipped and it's treacherous. So
Mm.
they see things in a different way. And I think it really, I hear all the time from them that it's inspiring.
I would imagine it also develops, as you're describing it, it develops empathy, which,
Yeah,
boy, do we need more of that.
absolutely. Absolutely. And of course there are lots of differences, whether they be economic, religious differences. And so we make an attempt to pair people and to really experience diversity in those various ways. And for the young people, who come from all parts of the country to do an internship here, they're really exposed to a whole new world that they might not have been exposed to before. We have students who come here that hear, about pieces of history from the seniors that they had no knowledge of. That they didn't know that there was a pogrom. They didn't know it totally changes people's vantage points and really helps inspire a lot of people. Not everybody who comes through an internship or a teen program here needs to become a social worker or needs to become a geriatric professional, but what our hope is that they become a dedicated community servant in whatever way that manifests for them. And there's so many ways to do that. There's so many different titles. We have people that have come through here that are now doctors that specialize in geriatrics. We have people that
Mm-hmm.
just volunteer their time when they can. There's so many different ways to do it, but I think it can help instill a dedication to and an awareness of the benefits of being with people that are rare.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can hear the passion in your voice, and I can see why you feel um, excited about it and optimistic. I mean, that you can really see the transformation. And
Yeah.
that is different, I think, than in a clinical
Hmm.
practice, where often people like me think, boy, I think I'm doing, I think I feel like we're making progress, but I'm not really sure. I mean, I can see,
Yeah.
as you described, the senior who was a completely different person,
Yeah.
really transformative.
Yeah,
Um,
change happens more slowly or just more subtly, perhaps in your setting in a clinical practice, and that happens sometimes in these matches too. But it is remarkable how quickly even a single
mhm.
day event. When we have those package deliveries, there are volunteers that come and they're just going to spend an hour with a senior, and sometimes that hour alone sets off a different way of thinking or a dedication to being of service. Maybe not to that senior. Maybe I talk to sometimes people. They say, it made me think about my own grandmother or my own grandfather or my parent that I don't really go visit enough. That maybe I'm a little too quick to judge. That I think that they're not trying hard enough. And when I was meeting with this person, I was able to be sympathetic and empathetic in a way that I haven't been with my own loved one, and
Mhm.
sometimes it opens people up to seeing the challenges that their loved ones face.
Mhm. A lot of things that are transformative, not just this, relationship. There's this ripple effect. It sounds like in some of your programming, places that you don't even anticipate good
Yeah,
things happening.
absolutely.
Um, if somebody wants to learn more about your program, Lisa, where's the best place to connect?
The best thing to do is to go to DeRoteUSA.org. It's
Mm-hmm.
a very extensive website with lots of information for seniors and also for volunteers. And there's
Mm-hmm.
an easy way to sign up for a volunteer orientation, which is sort of
Mm-hmm.
the central clearinghouse if you want to participate in any of our programs, to find out,
Mm-hmm.
because we do a whole lot of things. So there are a lot of different options for people that have a lot of time, people that have a little bit of time, even people that live in other parts of the country. We have a program where people can make birthday cards because we
Mm.
send homemade birthday cards to seniors. So if somebody lives in another part of the country and they're artistically inclined or just creative and interested, then they can make homemade birthday cards for seniors. And I hear all the time from seniors who feel like maybe they don't have anyone else in their life that's going to send them a card at all, and they got this
Mm-hmm.
very thoughtful homemade birthday card. And these little things all make a difference.
So, yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I'm broadcasting from upstate New York and our listeners are all over the world. So, I was going to ask you, you are based in Manhattan.
Mhm.
The offices are only in New York City, or do you have other offices?
Yeah,
It's
we're
just New.
exclusively in Manhattan right now. The
Mm-hmm.
only program for seniors that they can participate in anywhere in the country is the University Without Walls program, the telephone classes. So we have a
Okay.
lot of people that participate in other parts of the country. Maybe they used to live in New York and they moved
Mm-hmm.
elsewhere. The
Mm-hmm.
other programs currently are all Manhattan based, and on the west
Mm-hmm.
side, we're 59th to 125th. And on the east side, we're 14th to 96th. One or two of the programs have slightly different service areas, but in general, that's our service area.
I see. Well, I am so pleased to have been able to speak with you. Your passion is infectious
Oh, thank you.
and it's been so informative. I mean, I know we talked a little bit in Saratoga and I know a
Yeah.
little bit about DeRote, but boy, it was just so nice to hear all. And I know we didn't even cover many of the aspects, but it just sounds like such a positive organization. And I am so glad that you are doing what you do.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's a community of people that serve older adults and working together. I do believe, maybe it sounds Pollyanna-ish, but I do believe we can make a difference. And I think we have
Mm-hmm.
an obligation to. It's good for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. I love to hear from my listeners, so send me an email at NicoleChristina.com and tell me what you'd like to hear more about. I would also greatly appreciate if you could hop on iTunes and rate the show. Ratings help other people find the podcast so I can share all these good, juicy interviews with others. I would also invite you to become a patron of the Zestful Aging podcast. Hop on over to patreon.com/Zestful Aging and consider making a small donation. You will be eligible for insider-only goodies and behind-the-scenes information, and it'll help you feel good knowing that you're contributing to the Zestful Aging podcast. I'll look forward to sharing more juicy interviews next week on Zestful Aging.